Hello and thank you for joining today's section of functional safety. My name is Daniel. This is part 6 of the 7-part video series where we're discussing IEC 61511 standard explained for process plant managers. And in today's session, we'll be talking about your responsibilities as a plant manager. So one of the responsibilities as a plant manager when it comes to functional safety is ensuring regular proof testing of your safe loops. In your SRS document, that's your safety requirement specification document, there is a section where you will find the proof test interval. This same proof test interval is part of the parameters we use in calculating, doing our PFD average calculations during the seal verification process, okay? So, if you don't keep to the documented interval, especially when it increases, if it increases, it means you are increasing the probability of failure on demand, the unavailability of your safe loop, meaning you are increasing the probability that your personnel will be fatally affected if anything happens, because the possibility of hazardous event occurring will increase. So it is your responsibility as a plant manager or decision maker to ensure that proof test intervals are maintained in your plant for all your safe loops. One of your responsibilities is to maintain documentation and compliance. You know, safety documentations, there are different documentations for your safe loop, right from your safe register to your SRS, even to your functional design specification, your safe loop drawings, your cause and effect matrix, your proof test procedure. You need to make sure that everything is up to date. If anything changes, you need to make sure that those documents, existing documents, will be updated, to match what is installed. Again, compliance, you need to follow due process when you're carrying out modification. You need to make sure that whoever or the system integrator or the functional safety team that is carrying out modification on your safe loops or on your SIS system, you need to make sure that they follow the proper due process. You as a plant manager should ensure that you've gone through your MOC, your management of change process, justify the need for the change. Then there has to be impact analysis, because you need to know what the impact of the modification you want to do on your SIS system, your safety instrumented system. You need to know the impact of that modification to the safety system and the system that are related to the safety instrumented system, okay? You need to know the impact. Then, before the modification is carried out, there has to be a modification work pack, well developed by your system integrator, Then, you need to go through it and ensure that it has gone through the review process and approve it before that modification work pack can then be used to carry out the modification that is required in your SIS system. And after modification, you need to ensure that you carry out functional safety assessment, phase 5. We'll have functional safety assessment phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You need to make sure that you carry out phase 5 of the functional safety assessment as well, okay? So you support management of change process, like I've mentioned, your MOC process, if there's any need for modification of your safety system, you need to make sure that the MOC process has been carried out the way it should be, appropriately, okay? So you need to ensure that your personnel, they're well trained, okay? And you need to be able to know when you need to bring in functional safety consultants like us who are registered and certified to ensure that the IEC 61511 standard is implemented the correct way in the process industry. Okay? So, one important thing is don't bypass safety systems without proper control. In your plant, you need to make sure you control the bypass and inhibits. Okay? And you make sure that your control room operators, they document every inhibit. Okay? Every bypass should be documented. And if there's a work going on, once it's finished, you make sure that that inhibit has been removed and the plant has been returned to safe condition. One important thing you need to know is that most IEC 61511 failures are not design failures. They are management failures. That's why it is important that you need to have functional safety management system in place. Checkmate competency, checkmate documentation, checkmate procedures for modification, carry out your MOC, do everything. And if you are following the standard the way you should, you won't have issues with auditors when regulatory bodies comes in for auditing, like in the UK here, the HSC. When they work, you won't be afraid when they're working because you know that your plant is in good shape. Safety is being maintained at all times, And it's for the benefit of you, your personnel on board or in the facility, your asset, the investment, the company's reputation. So that's why it is very, very important to ensure that the IEC 61511 standard is strictly complied to. Everything that relates to safety systems, you ensure that it's strictly in line with the IEC 61511 standard for process industry. That's functional safety standard for process industry sector. I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you for your time and see you on the next session. Cheers.